Well, what happened when we were a high-tax state? Manufacturing was, was looking elsewhere. So taxes do have an effect, and it's important for us as individuals and as government officials to keep the cost of what we do down, because businesses and individuals are going to flee. Remember, it's the personal income tax that's going up in Brooklyn. It's not a tax on American greetings. It's a tax on the people that are there. So if you're a company that's trying to keep your people, and if you're in a place that has high taxes, your people are going to quit and go to work someplace else. So it's we need to keep, the cost of government and government services are a very important component to keeping our business base here.
Although, Tom, I'll throw you a softball here as well, because it's my understanding in terms of the worry list of things as you go about your job, right, both retention but also to attraction, that issues like our educational attainment rate, aging infrastructure, and so forth are at least as high and maybe even higher concern when we're trying to get businesses to locate or expand here.
Yeah, taxes are not an issue in attracting business taxes. Personal taxes, we could do some work on. But business taxes are not an issue that my team and I run into.
I did not hear either of you gentlemen make reference to one of our greatest assets, and that is our proximity to the lake. We have a 100-mile or so coastline here, which could be used to vastly expand our shipping, waterfront development, resort, and a number of other uses. Has this entered into the discussion, and what do you foresee for the lake area 10 years from now?
Well, Tom, I think, did say the wind was sexy, but let me ask Brad. Let me ask Brad. When it comes to Fund for the Economic Future, where do you see, being on the lake can really help us? Well,
it is obviously an enviable position to be a port, and potentially a major port.
Although there's some issues with our port.
A few transitions. One thing that I hope will take advantage of this issue on the port is that we'll take a moment to breathe and look a little more expansively at how we pursue the port opportunities, because we do have a wonderful port opportunity in Cleveland, and we also have ports up and down the coastline of the lake, as you've said. We've got Lorraine, we've got things out in Ashtabula and elsewhere. And those should be looked at as a collective decision. And to think about, if we're going to put $100 million, $500 million, $1 billion, what's the smartest way to do it for this unit, this economic unit called Northeast Ohio, in a way that benefits the citizens of Cleveland, in a way that benefits the citizens of Lorraine or Ashtabula and all these places. And that, to me, is a decision that ought to be thought of systematically. And I hope that is occurring at some level, and if it's not occurring, I hope it will. And I'll note as well that, we think it's hard to work regionally. My counterpart in Detroit, there's something called the New Economy Initiative, reached out and said, we'd really like to have a port conversation about how Detroit and Cleveland and Toledo might work together to go to the next level, because we all got issues with the St. Lawrence Seaway, and we all are trying to attract more in. And so this is, again, one of these examples of where collaboration's really key, and if we all try to solve it for ourselves, we might end up spending more money to less effect than if we worked on it as a system.
Yeah, it's clearly going to be over the next 10 years. I think we're going to see some important changes there, developments, I should say, there. The trend of, or the issue of ports on the East Coast being very full and world trade continuing to grow is pushing a lot of people to figure out how they can get inland. On the southeast corner of our region, we actually touch the Ohio River the way we define the region. East Liverpool, south of Youngstown. And the community there is erected some cranes so they're forecasting that there's going to be containerized freight that's going to come up the Mississippi River. And that point right there is actually the northernmost point on the Ohio River right there, before it goes back down toward Pittsburgh. But the same is going to be true on Lake Erie. I think we will see that. It's going to take some time. The infrastructure is difficult and expensive to build, but the trends are clearly in that direction. More broadly, one of the things that, built on Brad's point, that I would hope that evolves over the next 10 years, that we don't have, we don't even have anybody who has this job, to look at the logistics infrastructure across the whole region, whether it's ports, whether it's, water ports, airports, railroads, highway. We don't have anybody even has that job to try to think about that as a system. And when you take our number one starting point that we use in Team NEO to attract business here, that we're right in the middle of what is still the heart of the North American economy, logistics is very important for us. And it's a real advantage for us. And we really should have, as a region, some kind of broader logistics strategy that takes advantage of all these different modes of transportation. And we don't have anybody working on that at this point.
Let me follow up. I would ask you both, how does that get created then? How does the conversation start to create that kind of logistics position? Or how does it even start to make sure that if the port moves, that's a regional decision? How do those conversations happen, and how do those decisions change?
Always a challenge. Some people need to come together. I think the business community is increasingly talking to each other about how to create a set of regional initiatives. The fund has done that kind of thing. I think between business and foundations, we need to help public officials come together around that as well, and because it's going to take all three to do that, and you can't work on everything. It's part of the problem. There's so many things we'd all like to do. It's part of what keeps these things from happening, because the agenda looks so big, people shy away from it. So we've got to come together around a smaller list of things, create some successes, and build on that, hopefully.
We're definitely in the cocoon stage of a community where we used to be this caterpillar that was set up for an old economy. And hopefully we're moving to where we're going to be this beautiful butterfly for the competitive, global, technology-driven economy of the future. But our structure is still like a caterpillar, and we want to get to a butterfly. And what that means is right now and we're inside the cocoon, and who knows what happens in a cocoon, but it's probably really painful. Right? I would not want to be that caterpillar, right, as I'm becoming a butterfly. But in a sense, that's what we are right now.
Right.
And so these things, Susan, in my sense, is we're kind of brute forcing them, and we're seeing opportunities and trying to use old systems and then modify old systems to be able to adapt to these new issues and problems. And, we screw it up a lot, and sometimes we get it right, and I think more often than not we're getting it right than screwing it up. But this, make no mistake, this is a transformation of one kind of world to a new kind of world, and right now it's being done with trust and face-to-face contact and picking up the phone and calling and trying it out. And sometimes you get bonked in the nose, and sometimes somebody invites you in for coffee. And so what literally would happen in this one is the ports would talk to each other, they'd involve the business community. We might try to help in whatever way we could, and there's just a score of these sorts of issues, as Tom said.